We have a variety of news to talk about today, including Shayne Gostisbehere facing a hearing with player safety and might be suspended. The Maple Leafs have signed another Russian prospect for next season. We have several injury updates, as well as another story regarding Patrick Berglund being arrested over in Sweden. We'll discuss the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about today in the NHL. Let's start things off here with the suspension to Flyers defenseman Shayne Gostisbehere. Now, in case you missed it, last night's action against the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Flyers were losing. It was kind of getting a little bit out of hand later in the third period. Mark Friedman of the Penguins was going in to put in the empty net goal, and right after he shot the puck into the net, Gostisbehere it was a little bit dirty, a bit of a cheap shot in my opinion. Basically gave Friedman a push to send him off balance into the boards very awkwardly. He was already coming in with a fair bit of speed, obviously to make sure he got the puck in, and all it takes is a little nudge or shove, and he went down into the boards pretty hard. Now, he did bounce up pretty quickly and appeared to be okay. No injury on the play. However, Shayne Gostisbehere has been suspended for 2 games by NHL player safety for this situation. Now, obviously, I know we talked a lot about the Tom Wilson situation, quite a drastic turn of events, but if we compare the two situations, really, obviously, in my opinion, player safety is very inconsistent, but a lot of it is to do with how the rule book is written, and I think that they're only able to do certain things in certain situations, and I think that's what needs to change. I think we'll get more change with what many people feel would be more consistent calls, more consistent suspensions, etc. with rule changes. I think that's what it's going to take, and obviously, it has to start at the top here with Bettman and the owners wanting that. So we'll see what happens. But Gostisbehere, for his efforts, has been suspended for 2 games. Now, as I mentioned, the Toronto Maple Leafs have signed another Russian prospect. They've been doing that a lot the past few years. We've had some hits and some misses, not only Russian, but other European players as well. So right now they've signed 26-year-old forward Kirill Semyonov, who's been playing center ice in the KHL. He's never been drafted by an NHL franchise. He was part of the KHL championship team in Avant-Garde this year, of course, with teammates like Ilya Kovalchuk, head coach Bob Hartley, former NHL connections there. So Semyonov will have his contract kick in next year. It's a 1-year deal at $925,000. Based off of what we can tell from his stats, doesn't look like he's an overly offensive player, but then again, the KHL is not as an offensive league, and it's a different style than what you see here in the NHL. He put up 36 points in 60 games in the KHL regular season this past year, and then he had 9 points in 23 playoff games en route to the capturing the KHL championship. So obviously, it's another experiment here from Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like we saw this year, they brought over Barabanov. That didn't really work out. Ended up trading him, brought over Mikko Lehtinen, who I really thought was going to have more of an immediate impact and could step in right away, and ended up being a spare part, ended up being traded as well. But they've had other guys like Mikheyev and, so on that would come over, and, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's worth a shot here. They are going to need players that are on cheaper contracts due to a tight salary cap situation, and we'll see next year if this works out. But I would imagine it'd be somebody who could audition to be a part of their bottom 6. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of injury updates here today. We might as well stay with the Leafs since we're just talking about them signing a player here. They have a few guys I want to update you on. Nick Foligno is going to be out tonight and likely their next game as well. He was hurt in the last game, so Foligno is going to be out. It looks like Joe Thornton's going to move up and play in that spot where he's been playing with Marner and Matthews. So Foligno's out for a little while, and Freddie Andersen is getting closer to returning. It looks as though he is going to be sent down to the American Hockey League Toronto Marlies on a conditioning stint, so he can go down. Looks like he's expected to play probably half of their next game. I'm not sure how long he'll be down there, and obviously there are some limitations here due to cap and whatnot for him to be activated, but I know earlier reports had indicated that he could be back for the end of the regular season. I've heard comments from himself saying he would hope to get in a game or 2 before the end of the regular season, so we'll have to see how they can juggle things around here to get him in, or if they can, or how that's all going to work. But obviously good news that he's able to at least start to play, and see how the conditioning stint goes with the Marlies here starting real soon. Now, a few other injury updates. We have the Ottawa Senators lost a couple of defensemen in their last game against the Winnipeg Jets. Thomas Chabot went down with an injury after being hit awkwardly into the boards. His season is now over. They didn't really say a lot about the extent of his injuries, but given the fact that their games are fairly meaningless at this point, and if he's hurt, there's just really not much point in getting him in there. And they also lost defenseman Josh Brown, who was hurt and didn't really know the full extent of it. In the second period, he blocked a shot and hit him on the top of the skate. He ended up playing the rest of the game, but afterwards certainly had a lot of pain and discomfort, and they discovered that he had a broken bone in his foot from blocking that shot. So as much as Josh Brown started off to you could probably say an ugly start to his time in Ottawa, ended up getting put to the taxi squad and waited a really long time before he had another chance to come back and play. Since the trade deadline's come and gone, they traded guys like Braden Coburn, Mike Riley, etc. Then they had more of a chance for him to play, and he seemed to slot well with Victor Mete. After Mete was picked up on waivers from Montreal, those two actually had a decent pair for a while, and Brown was doing all right. He was certainly, no superstar by any means, but he was a lot better than he was at the beginning of the year. So it's kind of unfortunate that he gets hurt and doesn't get a chance to finish out the season. But at the same time, it's good news for younger defensemen like Jacob Bernard-Docker, who made his NHL debut and has been hopefully patiently waiting to get himself back in there. A lot of people have been kind of confused as to why DJ Smith wouldn't get him back in, whereas his fellow collegiate member and teammate that came with him from UND, Shayne Pinto, once he went in, he hasn't come out. He's played right straight through. But at the same time, the Sens have been winning a lot. And obviously, I know coaches don't like to tinker with their lineup. And even though the Sens were not expected to be a playoff team this year, they've been one of the better teams actually in their division and in the league in the last 10-15 games. And coaches are there. Their job is to win games. And sometimes it's challenging to get young players in when you want to keep the winning going on. But obviously it'd be good for him to get a chance to get his feet wet, although many view him as potentially being a long-term real good partner for Thomas Chabot. It's unfortunate we won't be able to see them play together, but still, the fact he can get some NHL reps in is certainly good news on his part. Ottawa Senators also announced today that they extended goaltender Anton Forsberg on a one-year contract extension. Of course, he was picked up on waivers from the Winnipeg Jets earlier, just about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Obviously, Forsberg's bounced around through the waiver wire a lot this past year. Didn't really get a chance to play much of anything until they got to Ottawa, and he's actually done fairly well. It kind of helped stabilize that position a bit. They've had a lot of injuries this year, with between Matt Murray being out on multiple occasions. Joey Decord comes in, who many felt was the goalie of the future, had a hot start, then got hurt. And Forsberg himself even was out shortly with an injury. Philip Gustafsson, Marcus Högberg's been hurt. They've had a lot of goalies in Ottawa this season, many of which who have played well as of late in the last couple months. Not so much in the first part of the year, which is why they're so low in the standings. But obviously Forsberg has fit well there. This is going to complicate things a little bit going forward because they do have Murray signed to a longer-term contract. They've got Decord and Gustafsson, who are both proved during their regular season time this year that they belong in the NHL and can certainly be a more than capable backup with potentially being a starter in the not-too-distant future. And they got Forsberg now. The Sens probably feel that they're very, very likely to lose a goaltender in expansion, and maybe Forsberg might be in a more attractive option to a team like the Kraken than the other two. I mean, realistically, he probably won't be because the other guys are much younger and have a lot brighter future ahead of them. But Forsberg has more experience, so I guess it depends on what they're looking for. So either way, it kind of protects them a little bit there in that position, creates a lot of depth. And if they don't lose a goalie in expansion, they'd be at risk to lose a goalie on waivers when next training camp and season gets underway. Either way, Forsberg's fitting nicely there, and he gets a one-year extension for his efforts. And of course, after the incident with Tom Wilson and the Rangers Capitals, Artemi Panarin is out for the season now. Obviously, they didn't really get into a lot of the details of his injuries, but certainly you could see that he was banged up pretty bad after the incident with Wilson, which we've already discussed at great length here. So I'm not going to really get into that too much more. Now, staying with the Capitals, Alex Ovechkin is going to continue to be out. Of course, he was already out, came back, played one shift and left, and he's still out of the lineup. The Capitals are still without Evgeny Kuznetsov as well, because he's back on the COVID protocol list. So the Caps are getting back TJ Oshie, though. Obviously, he's been out for a little bit after the loss of his father. His father passed away. The Capitals are going to be honoring TJ's dad, Tim, who they refer to as Coach Osh, with some stickers on their helmets here this evening. I know I'll never forget the interview of TJ Oshie when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago, the emotional interview he gave, talking about his dad and how he had been battling Alzheimer's and had trouble with his memory, but that was a memory that was going to stick with him the rest of the way. I know they were extremely close, and I know Oshie's dad was a huge part of the minor hockey community where they grew up and a big part of TJ's life. So certainly want to offer our condolences to TJ Oshie and the family. So good on them for honoring TJ's dad here this evening. And then lastly, I want to touch on a situation that I just came to my knowledge here, but apparently has been ongoing for a while over in Sweden. But former NHL player Patrick Berglund has been arrested. Now, you probably remember Berglund, who played quite a long time in the St. Louis Blues organization, and he was involved in that trade with the Buffalo Sabres where they traded Ryan O'Reilly. Obviously, Berglund ended up going to Buffalo, and then not long after, ended up abruptly just leaving his job with the Sabres and just going back to Europe. Like, he basically forfeited his contract and just took off. And obviously there was later revealed, I think he was battling a lot of different things, including, I think there was some mental health stuff going on. I'm not really sure. I don't remember the full extent of that interview, but I know, there was a lot of personal stuff going on for him that he just, gave up his contract and left. Now he's been playing in the SHL in Sweden, and apparently he's been accused of a variety of charges, which include domestic violence and rape. Some pretty serious accusations. Now, these accusations first came to light a while back. I know there were some reporters indicating they were kind of disappointed with how things were handled in the SHL. The team he was playing on, he was looked upon and viewed as being one of the team's better, stronger players. And even though these accusations were well known, he still played with the team throughout their playoffs and everything like that. And it's something that you don't normally see in the NHL when a player look at the Jake Virtanen situation in Vancouver. We don't know any more from that, but he's been accused of some not so good things too, and he's been put on a leave of absence. So either way, this is not good for him. He certainly denies the allegations. These are apparently rumored to have taken place, I believe it was back in the early to mid part of March, if I read the information correctly there. A lot of it had to be translated. I'm not sure exactly, word for word how everything was, but still some troubling news. I certainly hope for Berglund's sake that he is not guilty, because you hate to see these kinds of things, but certainly going to have a major impact on his reputation, you would think, probably one way or another. Unfortunately, that's usually how things go. But we'll keep an eye on the story and see what more we can find out as it goes through the legal process. So that is all your news for today. We'll likely be back with some more news here later on tonight, talk about some other potential stuff we might be seeing in the offseason. So stay tuned for that. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news from the entire NHL. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.